Are you really meant to be a startup founder? You will get the ultimate 6-point checklist in this episode of the Clarity Podcast. Once you're finished listening to this episode, share it with the fellow startup founders. Help others spread clarity. It won't cost you any money at all. As per Google, the definition of a founder is a person who starts a new institution or an organization. Let me now narrate my own story. My name is Paritosh Sharma. I am from India. I am a 2 times failed entrepreneur. My last startup was accelerated by Intel and Berkeley in Silicon Valley. I am 37 today. The good news is that I have complete clarity in life of what to do, and I'm already doing it. But the not so good news is, for far too long, I lived like an imposter. I have always loved freedom of work. Now, instead of focusing on how to build freedom for myself while working with great teams, I ended up taking the path to be an entrepreneur. Because somewhere I connected being an entrepreneur to freedom in life, freedom in work. Much later in life, I realized I am not tuned to be a founder. There are 6 main reasons for it, and you could use this as a checklist for yourself too. Now you can pause the podcast and make notes of these 6 points. These are going to be life-changing for you. Number 1, and my personal top reason for saying that I am not tuned to be a founder, is lack of patience capital. I come from a middle-class family, and my brought up was absolutely non-ambitious. I actually started working while in college to turn things around for my family financially. If you don't have enough patience capital to sustain for at least 24 months, my advice is do not start up, because you will burn out. When you will see no money coming in for several months, and when you will literally have to invest more money to build either a product or start a service, you will start getting under stress. It is extremely important that you and your family do not get under financial stress, and that you are very well covered insurance-wise and otherwise. So the lesson is lack of patience capital. Number 2, persistence. Because of lack of patient capital, I could not persist. And that's just my story. Yours could be very different. My focus in life always remained capital, because I was really tuned to turning things around for my family financially. And this is where the problem really began. My focus was to build capital. I should have built a career with stable companies or fast-moving startups wherein I could have had ESOPs, and maybe at a certain time the startup could have either taken over those ESOPs and I could have made money. But instead, what I did was I mixed my narrative in my head of freedom with being an entrepreneur, and hence I ended up failing twice over. Number 3, clarity, which is what the name of this podcast is, the Clarity Podcast. This is the most important of them all. If your why is not very clear, why are you doing what you are doing? You will not persist and you will fail. It is 100% clear. And that is why it is extremely important that you understand that you have to be super clear about why are you doing what you are doing. Do not just do something for the sake of, the world is doing it. It is cool. There is so much noise or voice around this one particular thing. Fintech is cool, or health tech is cool, or agri-tech is cool. Just do something where you have complete clarity. Point number 4, false ego. Luckily, I come from a great upbringing and I understand karma and dharma. And hence I was never in a false ego. But I have seen several founders fail because they have the ego of being the smartest in the room. A lot of founders actually say, look, I could do that stuff a lot faster than this particular person that I've hired to do this stuff for. Or I could just do this way more smarter, way more easily at a much lesser cost. But you don't have to be in this false ego. Number 5, delegation and creating more leaders. I learned the lesson of delegating and enabling and empowering more people to be leaders a lot later in life. I wish in my first startup, somebody should have just shaken me up and told me, hey Paritosh, this work, this whatever that you're doing, you should just simply outsource it or hire somebody to do it. I wish somebody had made me learn the lesson of actually delegating work, hiring relevant people. Because only then you become a real founder or a real entrepreneur. Before that, when you are the one doing everything in your company, you are fundamentally a freelancer. You've just fundamentally employed yourself. Point number 6, product versus service. Now look, it's obvious. Products scale, services don't. The narrative that has been built by the venture capital industry is all about products. Do not forget that some of the greatest companies of the world, even today, are services companies. Technology, of course, looks very cool. It is much easier to build compared to the hard grind of services companies. But you must choose what you are really, really good at. Do not start up only by looking at the coolest companies at Y Combinator or some cool accelerator, or after reading press releases about the next unicorns or the next soonicorns. It doesn't make any sense. Because you will not persist, you will fail. Why are you fundamentally setting yourself up for failure? Is that what you really started for or started with? No. The 6 reasons that I just stated are my checklist. If you are awesome at all the 6 of them, go start a company, start a startup. If you lack in any of them, first build your muscle. That's my advice to you. Build your muscle. Build these 6 important points for yourself. I hope that you noted down all the points. If not, then repeat this part of the podcast again and again and again till the time you are able to make down all the important notes. Now comes a very critical point in this episode of the Clarity Podcast. If you have decided to be an entrepreneur, take care of the 4 things that I am now going to share. These 4 things are critical for your success. They are literally going to be your superpowers. Number 1, introspection. After you are done listening to this podcast, I really want you to introspect. Introspection is the most critical element of a great entrepreneur, a great startup founder. Go for long walks if you have to. Don't just make it clinical by making diary entries, by making checklists. Speak to yourself. Don't just say that, wow, I'm ranking myself 10 on 10 because I was able to complete my checklist, my to-do list today. Don't make it so clinical. Introspection can never be clinical. It is partly philosophical, it is partly your productivity, and then clarity starts coming in. Speak to yourself. For me personally, open skies and spaces really work. I take long walks all by myself. In fact, I remember taking long walks at the University of Berkeley campus too when my startup was accelerated there. Make this time about yourself. Point number 2, mental and physical health. Founders find it very, very cool to boast about the unending coding nights, the 24 or 72 hours hackathons, living on pizza and soda. But all of this is going to hurt you in the long run. And this is no theory, this has been proven by science. There is no guarantee that you will get a great exit and be a multi-millionaire in the next few years. But the guarantee is you would have done enough harm to your mental and physical health. It's okay to take it slow at times. Move fast and break things is a fancy slogan. It looks great on a wall, and hence let it be a poster on the wall in your office or at your home or wherever that you work from. Remember, you are supposed to move consistently and be a long-run performer and a leader. Only then will investors invest in you. Only then will customers buy from you. Have you ever heard from some of the greatest business leaders of the last generation, the previous generation, that they moved fast and broke things? No. They built everything with persistence and patience. And at the right time, it all grew and blew up for them. Get a body checkup done every 6 months. In fact, right now, just pause this podcast, make a note of it. Say, after listening to this podcast, I'm going to go online and register myself or book myself for a body checkup. Take short holidays with your family. It wouldn't hurt you. Please do not stress yourself with the fact that, hey, if I end up taking this short holiday, 3, 4, 5 days of work will get lost. You know what? Chances are extremely high that you will go on long walks on a holiday, you will come back refreshed, and you will probably be a lot more productive. Point number 3, share openly with your community. Be part of a community and share openly, because doing startups is extremely hard. It's a massively emotional roller coaster journey. You go up, you go down, it all happens in 24 hours. Share with the community even your failures. Ask dumb questions. Sharing will make you get insightful answers from others and help you grow into a better leader. Point number 4, do not miss your children growing up. I personally make it a point to be with my kiddo every day. In fact, I try and shorten my work visits, my travels, unless and until they're very, very critical. I generally try and travel the same day back to my city to be with my kid. They grow up very fast. Especially if you have a daughter or daughters, they grow up very fast, so be with them. Even if you turn out to be a multi-millionaire, you won't be able to turn back time or buy back the emotions. So please, be with your kids. See them grow up. Watch them grow up. Point number 5, build depth. It's easy to be a doctor or a scientist today from the WhatsApp university. Like during the COVID times, do you remember? Everyone was a doctor by themselves. Instead, invest time and build depth in a subject. Be an expert at something. That's when the world values you. Whatever that interests you. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be something that is cool in the startup world. It could be anything that you are extremely good at, you are extremely passionate about. That's what Steve Jobs said, right? And that's what will also help you break away from the imposter syndrome that most of us generally are in. You will always be meaningful and useful for the world when you build depth. Remember this. Now, the last point that is of utmost importance, and listen to it very carefully. Listen to it 10,000 times if you have to. Detach yourself from your idea. If you get too emotionally attached with your solution, you will stop seeing the problem in its actual depth. In fact, as I am personally building the Clarity podcast, I keep being detached from the Clarity podcast completely. For one simple reason, I realize that if I become too attached with the content that I'm doing, I will probably stop listening to the real depth, the real meaning, the real context of the feedback that my users, my listeners, you guys are giving to me. And hence I will lose touch and lose depth. And my content will go down over a period of time, which of course will not happen because I am keenly and closely listening to you while being detached from the idea. How useful was this episode of the Clarity Podcast for you? Tell me more. Rate us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, leave us comments on YouTube and everywhere else where you find this podcast. And to get karma points, share this episode with your startup friends and especially the young students and entrepreneurs in colleges and schools. The more you spread clarity, the more valuable you become for the world. More clarity to you. I will see you in the next episode.